Get real freaky. All about Pippi Long and Dashiki. Where you at in the address, they'll meet you. We ain't going back and forth and fake beefing. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Shit, nigga. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Like, why you even hanging with them for? Oh, that's your cousin, I put his brains on the floor. They don't never throw no money at the club. All they do is see you and speak me up. Like, what's with all the dick riding, bro? He's a nobody, I sent his ass to the stove. Deep on LJ and MJ outside the garage, you know. Give us front row tickets right now before we extort you. Better listen when I speak right now, who getting money? They'll slide up on your block right now, I'm that important. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Shit, nigga. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Fake tough, you must be off a pill, bro. My shooter with me ain't always in kill mode. Thanks to Rami, I'm always in chill mode. Don't think about it, nigga, I'll kill something. Don't make me go up in the go yard still package. Did him like SpongeBob, I'll kill Patrick. I make niggas give real good captions and double back on the candlelight and get it cracking. Get the slap hoop for $10,000 on my head, niggas capping. Niggas rappers, niggas actors, niggas bitches, niggas faggots. When his body hit the ground, get his jacket. The op lover died too, it was tragic. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Shit, nigga. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Man, we don't do ops. We don't do niggas who hang with them, associate with them. Nigga, we don't give a fuck about none of that, nigga. Yeah, we gon' put you in this casket too. Shit, we gon' get this nigga a 6-man casket. Yeah, hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Yeah, hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Yeah, yeah, hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. It's 2021 and niggas still broke.
Shalom, shalom. Shalom, we back, y'all. Yap gang in the building, Source gang over everything. You know how we rock it, man. So we're back, as promised, with the presentation for you guys. We're going to be dealing with the Eurasian Migrations, plural, into Africa. And we're going to demonstrate today that this has been going on for quite some time. And we have the evidence to prove it. So when we see these oral testimonies, legends, and or myths, as you guys call it, which myth can encapsulate reality, like the Jews going into West Africa and stuff of that nature. We do have the evidence to back that up. And that's what we're going to do today here on The Source. Like I said, when you look on the internet and you see people that have the interest, a common interest in what we're talking about or speaking against it, I don't see anybody coming up with this type of argumentum or even making it source-based or even putting in the effort that we do here. So if you're here, take out the time, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you find value in this channel. If you do not, unsubscribe, dislike the video, and you don't have to watch it. You're welcome to leave. But we're here to educate, disseminate information, And as promised, we will be dealing with Eurasian migrations into Africa. Again, as Muntaser has stated, people believe that there are static ethnicities, meaning groups don't move or migrate. They just stay in one locality. And as we proved over and over again in prior episodes, that is far from the case, especially when you're dealing with the YAP. And for newcomers, people that are not understanding what YAP is pretty much a genetic signature that you only find within those that are descendants of haplogroup DE. And according to our model, haplogroup DE would be the Shemites. And we'll touch on that. We'll touch on that in today's lesson as well. DE would be Shem, AB would be Ham, and CF would be Japhet. And how we come to that conclusion is if the biblical narrative be true, then we expect that all extant human populations would be descended from the three sons of Noah. So the three sons of Noah would have divulged into all major populations on the earth. And we divvy up and differentiate them through the major parahaplogroups DE, CF, and AB. AB being Ham, DE being Shem, CF being Japhet, because they are the first Europeoids. And according to Josephus, the first people to inhabit Europe would be the Japhites. Also, Jubilees says they inhabit the north above Shem's territory, which would be Europe. Okay? Anatolia going into Europe and stuff of that nature. And we find their haplogroup. Europe is one of the best or well-studied localities when it comes to genetics. So we know who was there in times past. I believe the oldest Y chromosome is dated to 45,000 years ago, and it's in Europe. And it's an FM89 lineage. So just briefing you guys before we get started today and go into the meat and potatoes of this. So we're going to dive right into this presentation. But before I get started, I want you guys to know, because some people in the comments, some people that opposes, we don't do this for you. You guys really have this center of gravity attitude where you think that, oh, well, he's just offending me, so it doesn't matter. Like I've been telling you guys, I am the head chairman of the I Don't Give a Damn committee. So if this offends you, I know you Afrocentrics hate hearing stuff like this. It might be time for you to click off the video and find something else to do. Because I'm not here to please you. And I'm not going to curtail my content because you guys are offended at theories. You're offended at evidence that leans towards the other direction. I do not do this and do not wake up in the morning and say, you know what, this person such and such said such and such and he didn't like it, so I'm not going to talk about that. No, you done lost your damn mind. You're on the wrong channel. Just want to throw that disclaimer out there. Also, people that are commenting in the live chat, commenting is a privilege. Do not abuse it. It is not a right. So just be mindful. If you're in the comments cutting up, we will get rid of you. If you have any legitimate questions, I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. All right, so with that, let's get into this. Let's get into this presentation. Eurasian migrations into Africa. Okay. Shalom to everybody that just came into the video. Hit the like button, share it on the social media platforms, and subscribe. All right. If you find value in the channel, if you don't, then you don't have to do any of those things. Let's get started. You guys should be able to see the screen. Let's go to reading view. Eurasian migrations into Africa. All right. So what we're dealing with today. Load it up nice and big for you guys to see. So this is a heavy topic dealing with Eurasian non-Africans migrating into Africa. As we posit that the YAP markers was originally Asian and then migrated to Africa, but also there are other markers that even point towards that direction, which we're going to get into today. We're going to be dealing with different traits that we know come from Eurasia and found its way into places like Sub-Saharan Africa, which is a way we know that Eurasians, people with those traits, moved into those areas and mixed with the local populations and autochthonous populations. So there's many ways you can slice this. So this is going to be, it might be quite lengthy, but we're going to get through it. First slide, DNA genealogy by YASHAR-YA'OH, a geneticist named YASHAR-YA'OH. And the reason why I'm bringing him up, because I like the way he groups the haplogroups. He has haplogroup F through R, which includes T, represents Europeoids, as I have explained today and in prior episodes. These would be your Japhites, right? The Mongoloids and Austronesians, C, would also be your Japhites because C and F, they share a putative common ancestor, which would have had the CF parahaplogroup. The Middle Eastern haplogroup D and E. So he calls Middle Eastern haplogroups D and E. And that's where we put the origin of D and E as well, or in Asia in general. So I find it very interesting that YASHAR-YA'OH came to that conclusion. But it's really not too hard of a conclusion to come to, because when you look at D, D is not really in Africa like that. D is all the way in Japan, and it's pretty much a primarily Asian marker. So when you look at his brother, but wait a minute, your brother marker may be in Africa today amongst modern populations today, but in times past, it did not have its genesis there. You can easily argue that with the evidence available, like D not being in Africa. As you can see, Middle Eastern haplogroups D and E, and we label that Shem according to our model. This is genomic diversity in the people of India. So it's just a collection of genetic papers dealing with India. And they have this to say at page number 168. It says a group of people with the YAP insertion migrated into South Asia to Central Asia and reached to the Mediterranean. So it's saying that YAP migrated from South Asia to Central Asia and reached to the Mediterranean. They gave rise to the E lineage. So according to the Genomic Diversity in People of India, which is a government of India project where they got all these geneticists together and collected these papers, they're saying that YAP started in Asia, in which we lean towards that side as well. And then migrated from South Asia to Central Asia, and then finally reached the Mediterranean. They gave rise to the E lineage. With mutations at M40 and M96, the E lineage dispersed to Africa, Middle East, Southern, and Eastern Europe. Lineage E1 is predominant over entire Africa and at lesser frequencies in Middle East and Europe. This back migration of people to Africa through the Levant is supported by Hammer et al. 1997. This was one of the first, when they started digging into the YAP and discovering YAP, the first thing they said that this is Asian. That was one of the first arguments for it. It was not always they would not always look at YAP as having an African genesis. So as you can see back in 1997, when the field of genetics wasn't even that old, they were making this claim. It said this back migration of people to Africa through the Levant is supported by Hammer et al., Althide and Hammer, Kranstraker, Cruciana, and Cabrera, which is more recently in 2018, which we're going to be dealing with his paper as well. It says YAP positive E migrated back to Africa with other Eurasian haplogroups. So the genomic diversity in people of India, this group, they're looking at YAP as a Eurasian haplogroup, such as the lineage R1B1, estimated 18 to 23,000 years ago, and lineage T, which they believe arose 39 to 45,000 years ago, which has been observed at high frequencies in northern Cameroon and in low frequencies in Africa. So this, again, seeing these Eurasian markers in sub-Saharan Africa and in Africa in general is showing you that there was a migration of people coming from Eurasia into Africa, because we know that these people don't belong in Africa. It's just that simple. It's a logical deduction with the evidence available. And as we see here in this book, I'm going to read it again. It says here, YAP positive E migrated back to Africa with other Eurasian haplogroups, such as lineage R1B1 and lineage T, which has been observed at high frequencies in northern Cameroon and in low frequencies in Africa. Then E lineages, observed at high frequencies, 80 to 92% in Africa. Thus, the major subsets of Y lineage that arose from M168 lineage do not trace to an African origin. So they're saying that, hey, E does not have an African origin. It's Eurasian. It says, likewise, pre-L3, this is mtDNA right here, MN and R haplogroups mtDNA have no indication of an African origin. The split of the Y chromosome composite DE haplogroup is very similar to the age of mtDNA L3, predominantly North African clades in mtDNA M1 and U6, which arose in southwestern Asia and differentiated into their major subclades while they were in the Mediterranean area, and only later some subsets of M1A, U6A2, and U6D diffused to East and North Africa through the Levant. So as we can see that these people have been doing this for thousands of years ago, this migration from the Levant into Africa has been taking place. It has took place. Thus, modern humans use a southern coastal route for their out of Africa exit and the Levantine route from Asia to Africa for back migration. This is what the source says. So again, this comports with our theory says. Right? All right, let's keep going. I want to go to the book of Jubilees, chapter 8, and I believe it's very pertinent that we do so because there's something that I don't hear people bring out much about the land allotment of Shem. So it says here in chapter 8, verse 12, and there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth. And as we just established in the first slide, the middle of the earth would have initially been belonging to D and E. It says, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and as for his sons for the generation of eternity, from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water from the river Tina. And his portion goeth towards the west through the midst of the river, and it extended till it reacheth the water of the abyss, out of which the river goeth forth and poureth its waters into the sea of Maat. And this river floweth into the great sea. And all that is toward the north is Japheth. So everything north of Shemite territory was designated Japheth, right? This includes Europe too. This is why also in Jubilees it says the land of the cold, right? It says, and all that is towards the south belongeth to Shem, and it extended till it reacheth Karaso. This is the bosom of the tongue which looketh towards the south. Reading on, it says, and his portion extended along the great sea, and it extendeth in a straight line till it reacheth the west of the tongue which looketh towards the south. For the sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian sea. And if you don't know what this is talking about the Nile River. This is what that's talking about. So Shemite territory extends into the Nile River, according to the tradition that's written in the Jubilees, which was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, by the way. It's some of the oldest Jewish literature that we have. It says, and it turneth from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the great sea, and on the shore of its waters, and extended to the west to Afra. So Afra here is just like you saying Afri. This is where you get the word Africa from, right? And even in footnotes, this is from sacredtext.org. They have the footnotes, as you can see on the bottom, i.e. Africa in the restricted sense of the Roman province, which included Egypt and the other northern parts of Africa bordering the Mediterranean. Now, this is huge. This was considered Shemite land, northern Africa. And we're going to take a lot of our time today explaining to you why that is pertinent to the claims and to the theory that we have. So again, it says the land of Shem extended to the west to Afra, which we know is Africa, or Afra, and it extended till it reacheth the waters of the river Gihon, to the south waters of Gihon, to the banks rivers, and extended towards the east till it reached the Garden of Eden, to the south thereof, to the south, and from the east to the whole land of Eden, and the whole cast it turneth to the east, in the bank of the mouth of the river Tinya. This portion come forth by the lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever unto his generations forevermore. And Noah rejoiced that his portion came forth for Shem and for his sons. And he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in the prophecy, for he had said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem, which includes Africa, North Africa. I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you why that's very important. That's a part of the tradition. Scientists discover genomic ancestry of Stone Age North Africans from Morocco. Ancient nuclear DNA from 15,000-year-old modern humans from Morocco, the oldest ever recovered from Africa, shows dual genetic ancestry to the ancient Near Eastern and Sub-Saharan African populations. So if you don't know, if you're not familiar with this, this is talking about the Ibero-Maurusians and the Tafarat individuals. And within these individuals, they found that 2/3 of their autosomal DNA was Near Eastern. And then 1/3 was Sub-Saharan African. So they used this population to bridge Sub-Saharan Africans and Near Easterners. It says right here, as early as the Stone Age, human populations had links that stretched across continents. The high proportion of Near Eastern ancestry shows that the connection between North Africa and the Near East began much earlier than many previously thought. Although the connections between these regions have been shown in previous studies for more recent time periods, it was not generally believed that humans were interacting across these distances during the Stone Age. Our analysis shows that North Africa and the Near East, even at this early time, were part of one region without much of a genetic barrier. Our analysis, for people that's slow of hearing, shows that North Africa and the Near East, even at this early time, were part of one region without much of a genetic barrier, explains co-senior author YASHAR-YA'OH. And as we can see, we just read in Jubilees the tradition that this would be Shem's territory as well. Now, this is from the supplementary materials of the Pleistocene North African genomes linking Near Eastern and Sub-Saharan African human populations. 2018 is when this was published. North Africa is a strong candidate for the place, having kept basal Eurasians because it was well connected to Eurasia. And according to our model, these will be your early E markers as well, living in North Africa. These will be the Shemites, the Middle Eastern haplogroup that Klyosov designated as. So again, North Africa is a strong candidate for the place, having kept basal Eurasians because it is well connected to Eurasia. From this point of view, the Upper Paleolithic individuals from the Tafarat are likely candidates as being direct descendants of or closely derived from the basal Eurasian population. This is what the paper says. This is what the professionals are leaning towards. This is what they explicate. And who are these individuals? The Tafarat individuals are all E markers. They're all YAP. They're YAP positive. These basal Eurasians are YAP positive. They're our ancestors. They're from our family tree. I'm going to read it again. It says, from this point of view, the Upper Paleolithic individuals from the Tafarat are likely candidates as being direct descendants of or closely derived from the basal Eurasian population. All right, let's keep going. Now, this is from isogg.org dealing with haplogroup E. It says, why DNA haplogroup E would appear to have arisen in Northeast Africa based on the concentration and variety of E subclades in that area today. But the fact that haplogroup E is closely linked with haplogroup D, which is not found in Africa, leaves open the possibility that E first arose in the Near or Middle East. I'm going to read that again. But the fact that haplogroup E is closely linked with haplogroup D, which first arose in the Near or Middle East and was subsequently carried into Africa by a back migration. E1B1 is by far the lineage of greatest geographical distribution. It has two important sublineages, E1B1A and E1B1B. So let me stop right there. E1B1B, a lot of people acknowledge that within the Ashkenazis, Mizrahi, Sephardim. That's our brother clade. We share the same paternal ancestor. So once you stamp them, you stamp us. When you stamp them as Shem, you stamping us as Shem because we share the same paternal ancestor. It's biologically inclined. Real quick, I'm going to sidebar for a minute. You got people on the internet bringing up Natufians and Tafrod individuals, and they're talking about J. Hello, newsflash. The Tafrod individuals, the Natufians, are all E. They're all E markers, not J. You don't see J in the Levant until the Copper and Bronze Age. Prior to that, you have these basal Eurasians there. And that's just a fact. It says E1B1A is an African lineage that probably expanded from Northern Africa. What did we just read about Northern Africa? Maybe you guys forgot. Let me go back. North Africa is a strong candidate for the place having kept basal Eurasians because it is well connected to Eurasia. Now let's go here. Read this again. E1B1A is an African lineage that probably expanded from the Northern Africa to Sub-Saharan and Equatorial Africa with the Bantu agricultural expansion. I want y'all to hold on to that Bantu expansion. We're going to talk about that a little later. E1B1A is the most common lineage among African Americans. E1B1B1 probably evolved either in Northeast Africa or the Near East, and then expanded to the west, both north and south of the Mediterranean Sea. EB1B1 clusters are seen today in Western Europe, Southeast Europe, the Near East, Northeast Africa, and Northwest Africa. The Crusani articles, references and links below, are indispensable resources for understanding the structure of this complicated haplogroup. But note that the Crusani haplogroup labels are now superseded because of the recently discovered new SNPs that lie closer to the root of the E branch of the Y haplogroup tree. Here's another legend of Africa, the name of Africa, and its association to Shem through Abraham. This is Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, Book 1, Chapter 15. It states, Abraham, after this married Keturah, by whom 6 sons were born to him, men of courage and of sagacious minds, Sambran and Jasar, Madon, Madian, and Josabak, and Sus. Now the sons of Sus was Sabathon and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Latusium and Ashur and Lum. The sons of Madu were Ephas and Ophraim and Anak and Ebadas and Eldas. Now for all these sons and grandsons, Abraham contrived to settle them in colonies. And they took possession of the troglodytes in the country of Arabia, the Happy, as far as it reaches to the Red Sea. It is related of this Ophraim that he made war against Libya and took it, and that his grandchildren, when they inhabited, called it from his name, Africa. So here's another association that we find in Jewish literature with Africa or Northern Africa with Shemites. According to this narrative, they're saying it would have been a son of Abraham to do so. Now watch this. I'm going to show you why that's important. This is scientific reports. Whole Y chromosome sequences reveal an extremely recent origin of the most common North African paternal lineage, EM183, M81. EM183, EM81 is the most frequent paternal lineage in North Africa, and thus it must be considered to explore past historical and demographical processes, hereby using whole Y chromosome sequences from 32 North African individuals. We have identified 5 new branches within EM183. The validation of these variants in more than 200 North African samples, from which we have also have formations of 13Y STRs, have revealed a strong resemblance among EM183 YSCR haplotypes that pointed to a rapid expansion of this haplogroup. Moreover, for the first time, by using both SNP and STR data, we have provided updated estimates of time to the most recent common ancestor for EM183, which evidence an extremely recent origin of this haplogroup between 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. Now, if you're a Bible believer and your worldview is that Abraham was real and he did have these sons with Keturah, it's plausible that a son of Keturah is actually fathering many North Africans. I would argue that. And that would fit the legend of one of his sons actually spreading into North Africa, as we just read. Because we can see that this branch is fairly young, and I would argue that Abraham is actually E1B1. So he would be able to produce both subclades. Anyway, read on. It says, our results showed a lack of population structure within EM183 branch, which could be explained by the recent and rapid expansion of the haplogroup in spite of the reduction in STR heterozygosity towards the west, which would point to an origin in the Near East. Ancient DNA evidence together with our TMRCA estimates points to a local origin of EM183 in Northwest Africa. All right. We got a long way to go, y'all. But there's a lot of information that needs to be covered and a lot of ground here. So far we covered North Africa being tied to basal Eurasians. We showed you guys the connection of Shem to North Africa in the book of Jubilees. And we also gave a legend that the name Africa comes from a son of Shem. And then we, precepted that with the fact that you do have an early E1B1B lineage that expanded about 2,000 to 3,000 years ago that represents a majority of North Africans today, which could be matching the legend that's associated with a son of Abraham. Moving on, now we're going to move on to the fact that we see the ability to digest milk as an adult within some Sub-Saharan Africans. So this is from Sahelian pastoralism from the perspective of various associated with lactase persistence. This is the ability to, digest milk well into your adulthood, the adult years. It says here, based on the high frequencies of 13910T in Eurasian Y chromosome haplotypes in the Fulani from Cameroon, it has been suggested that the LP variant may have been introduced in their population from outside Africa. It has been suggested that the LP variant may have been introduced in their population from outside Africa. Let me read it again. It has been suggested that this LP variant may have been introduced in their population from outside Africa. I know that makes some of you Afrocentrics mad. You Afrocentrics are angry because you think that anything to do with Africa, anything to do with Africans is insular, it's incestuous, it's stuck, it's static, it's nothing outside influencing, no external influences. The people are just stuck there for thousands of years. The evidence does not say that. The evidence does not point towards that. like the ability to digest milk, as we see here. Let me keep reading. It says here, based on Fulani DNA samples, but again, from northern Cameroon, it has been demonstrated that their 13910T variant shares its haplotype background with Europeans. It has been demonstrated, meaning this has been proven. This is not speculation. Fulani DNA samples, but again, from northern Cameroon, it has been demonstrated that their 13910T variant shares its haplotype background with Europeans, which suggests a single mutation event for this mutation in its introduction via admixture of non-African sources and through gene flow. Same article. As mentioned above, the 13910T variant occurs not only in Western Eurasia, but also in Northwestern Africa. Based on high frequencies of 13910T and Eurasian Y chromosome haplotypes in the Fulani from Cameroon, it has been suggested that this LP variant may have been introduced in their population from outside Africa based on, we just read this. Sorry for the recapitulation, but recapitulation is beautiful. This is what I want to read. It says, for the Sahelian pastoralists, the most important animals has always been cattle whose milk, as reported in several anthropological and ethnological studies, was consumed fresh. Although the YASHAR-YA'OH, ancestor of the domestic cattle, also lived in northeastern Africa as evidenced by rock art and archaeological findings, its domestication took place in Asia. The YASHAR-YA'OH was domesticated independently in the Near East and in India, and two different breeds were subsequently introduced to Africa. The route these Near Eastern cattle keepers took. Let me read this again, because I know it's going to go over somebody's head. You Afrocentrics are very religious about keeping everything in Africa. Let me read this very slow for you. The route these Near Eastern cattle keepers took. Cattle keepers migrated from the Near East into Africa. The route these Near Eastern cattle keepers took went through the Nile Valley and then from less than 8,000 years ago on via Wadi Hawar to Central Sahara, while Indian cattle was imported to East Africa by the sea route across the Indian Ocean, then via Southern Arabia at less than 4,000 years ago. So as we can see, you see a gene flow, you see a demic diffusion or endemic diffusion of peoples moving from the Near East into Africa. How do we know this? Their ability to digest milk. And also we see the breeds of the actual cattle from the Near East making their way into Africa as well. Next article. Carriers of the mitochondrial DNA macrohaplogroup L3 basal lineage migrated back to Africa from Asia around 70,000 years ago. Results: the correlations ages of all Eurasians, M, N, and African L3 lineages, both around 71,000 years ago, are not significantly different. The oldest M and N Eurasian clades are found in southeastern Asia, instead near or of Africa, as expected by the Southern Route hypothesis. The split of Y chromosome composite D haplogroup is very similar to the age of mtDNA L3. And Eurasian origin and back migration to Africa has been proposed for the African Y chromosome haplogroup E. Excuse me. Inside Africa, frequency distributions of maternal L3 and paternal E lineages are positively correlated. So again, L3 is a sister branch to E. It's pretty much they pair them together as being symmetrical. This correlation is not fully explained by geographic or ethnic affinities. This correlation rather seems to be the result of a joint and global replacement. I want y'all to hear this. All you you pro-Africaners, Afrocentrics, I want you to listen to this closely. The correlation rather seems to be a result of a joint and global replacement of the old autochthonous male and female African lineages by the new Eurasian incomers. Let me read it again. Global replacement of old autochthonous, meaning the original peoples of Africa, male and female African lineages by new Eurasian incomers. That's just the facts. You had E come in, and they depleted and replaced and outcompeted the A and B markers that were within Africa. That's just history. So if 1493 is watching, my ancestors kicked your ancestors' ass. I got to be like that towards you watching my video, if you're hearing this. Haplogroup E depleted and replaced those A markers, which you come from. All right. I just had to recapitulate that part and really drive that home. We don't deal with science, though. We've been dealing with science all this whole time. Let's keep going. Same paper. The Eurasian origin of the mtDNA macro haplogroup L3. The Southern Root hypothesis proposes that the Eurasian branches M and N of macro haplogroup L3 differentiated in or near the African continent and rapidly spread across the Asian peninsulas to reach Australia and Melanesia. Under this hypothesis, it is expected that the correlation ages of haplogroups should generally decrease from Africa to Australia. However, we have demonstrated that this is not the case. Just on the contrary, the oldest M and N haplogroups are from southern China and Australia, not India. And the associations between longitudinal geographic distances and relative ages of M and N haplogroups run contrary to the expectation from east to west. This presents us with a dilemma. It appears that two gravity centers of L3 expansion exist, one in Africa and one in Southeastern Asia. A geographic equidistant midpoint would situate the primary radiation of L3 in India if a southern route were followed by the African colonizers and above the Himalayas between Tibet and here, if the northern route was followed. Furthermore, as the correlation ages of African L3 branches and that of the Eurasian L3MN branches are very similar. At approximately 71,000 years ago, the temporal and spatial midpoints might also coincide, as the group of modern humans that hypothetically return to Africa is expected to include both females and males. Searching for Y chromosome phylogenetic and phylogeographic information might provide additional information. So in layman's terms, they're pointing to a Eurasian origin of L3 because they see older haplogroups in Asia, and they don't see it in Africa or near Africa. That's the argument. Now, this is Eurasian origin of the Y chromosome haplogroup E. In origin in Asia and return to Africa was proposed long ago for the Y chromosome African haplogroup E. This hypothesis was based on the derived state of the African YAP positive haplotypes 4 and 5 haplogroup E with respect to the ancestral Asian YAP positive haplotype 3, which is haplogroup D. So basically the argument goes, D is completely Asian. You can't even make the argument that it's African. It's all the way in Japan. We're seeing it in East Asia. We're seeing it in Tibet. So why are you making its brother clade African? Why are you giving it the African origin when we can see that D is clearly Asian? No debate. This is why when DNA and genetic studies started to first ramp up and they discovered the gap, they said, hey, this has to be Eurasian. Let me keep reading. It says the later discovery of the new markers evidenced that D and E were sister branches of the YAP node. Haplogroup D showed the derived status for M174 and the ancestral status for M40 in Asia, whereas haplogroup E was characterized by the derived status for M40 and the M140 in Africa. Thus, the migratory sense between continents of both haplogroups could not be assured. A few YAP-positive individuals ancestral for both markers were detected in West Africa and in Tibet. Although assigning a parahaplogroup DE, its actual ancestral state cannot be confirmed. Furthermore, a new mutation, P143, united the two other Eurasian haplogroups C and F as brothers, and in turn, DE and CF were joined to an ancestral node defined by mutation M168 and M294. That's what they're calling CT. The initial scenario proposed to explain this complicated situation was that two independent migrations out of Africa occurred, one marked by D and the other marked by CF pair of lineages. However, a new interpretation arose following discovery of more than 60,000 single nucleotide variants by next generation sequencing techniques. The most parsimonious interpretation of Y chromosome phylogeny constructed with these variants is that the predominant African haplogroup group E arose outside the continent and back migrated to Africa. Let me read that again. The most parsimonious. What does parsimonious mean? The explanation with the least amount of assumptions. That's what the law of parsimony does. Pick the explanation with the least amount of assumptions. I know you guys are pissed off that are Afrocentric, want to give us our genesis in Africa and say that we were stuck in Africa for eons and eons and eons. But we have evidence against that. We have counterclaims. We have scientific papers that point towards the other direction. So we've been reading all day. I know you're upset. You just got to get over that. Haplogroup E arose outside of the continent and back migrated into it.
You looking at yourself crying in the mirror?
Shut the fuck up!
Oh my God.
That's the hundreds and hundreds of Afrocentrics that's gonna watch this cry, bitch, and moan and make shit up after they see this. You know, you're just gonna have to stay mad, man.
You looking at yourself crying in the mirror?
Shut the fuck up!
Oh my God.
Hey, like I always say, before we even go into this, man, and go further, I'm gonna need y'all Afrocentrics and brothers and sisters that's watching this channel. Please do this.
Hi, everybody. Time to use your noggin. How do you use your noggin, you say? Well, here's how you use it every day. Use your noggin when you write a letter. Use your noggin when you make it better. Use your noggin when you play guitar. Use your noggin to spot a star. Use your noggin when you make a scene. Use your noggin when you mix up green. Use your noggin to play a game. When you use your noggin, it's never the same. Use your noggin to sing a song. Ask another noggin to sing along. Use your noggin with your computer. Hey, that's Z. What could be cuter? Use your noggin. That's what it's for.
I'm using my noggin.
Are you using yours?
I'm using my noggin. Are you using yours? That's the question of today. So let's continue with this here. It states here, Y chromosome phylogeny constructed variants is the predominant African haplogroup E arose outside the continent and back migrated to Africa. The DE split as lower bound and the radiation of E into Africa as an upper bound. Yields a time frame highly coincidental with the dates estimated for the mtDNA haplogroup L3 expansions. The spatial distribution of residual Y chromosome haplogroup D in Asia is a good indicator of the geographical location of the putative DE split. So again, they're looking at haplogroup D and say, wait a minute, D is in Asia, man. That's its brother is in Africa. Where did they split? Asia. E started in Asia and then migrated into Africa. That's the argument. I know you're going to get upset. You're going to get mad because you want to lock your people up in a prison, an ideological prison of Afrocentric thought. It says here the highest frequency and diversity of D are in the Tibet region, although D is also present at a low incidence throughout Southeast Asia. Two other centers where notably frequency are in Japan and the Andaman Islands, possibly representing an edge relic areas of wider distribution long ago. There are no native D lineages in India, decreasing the possibility that this subcontinent was the center of the DE partition, which argues against a southern route. It's likely that the divergence of Y chromosome D and E haplogroups occurred up to the Himalayas and in or westward of the Tibet, which coincides with the hypothetical bifurcation center proposed for the mtDNA L3 macro haplogroup. So that's how they come to the conclusion that there's a Eurasian origin of Y chromosome haplogroup E. So don't get mad at me. Don't hate the player, hate the game. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Go write Vincent Cabrera. Go write to Vincent Cabrera and tell him you're anti-African. You're teaching Africans to hate themselves because you wrote this paper in 2018. How dare you? You go talk to them. Y'all want to come to me? Go talk to them. They published this. That's why it's pertinent that you use your noggin. All right? Let's keep it going. Next slide. Y chromosome E haplogroups, their distribution and implication to the origin of Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralism. Our boy Muntaser, the Sudanese geneticist, was a part of this study. Archaeological and paleontological evidences point to East Africa as a likely area of early evolution of modern humans. Genetic studies also indicate that populations from the region often contain, but not exclusively, representatives of the more basal clades of mitochondrial and Y chromosome phylogenies. Most Y chromosome haplogroup diversity in Africa, however, is present within macro haplogroup E that seem to have have appeared 21 to 32,000 years before present, somewhere between the Red Sea and Lake Chad. The combined analysis of 17 biallelic markers in 1,214 Y chromosomes together in cultural background of 49 populations displayed in various metrics, network, multidimensional scaling, principal component analysis, which we're going to talk a lot about principal component analysis here in a minute, and neighboring joining plots indicate a major contribution of East African populations to the foundation of the macro haplogroup, suggesting a diversification that predates the appearance of some cultural traits and the subsequent expansion that is more associated with the cultural and linguistic diversity witnessed today. The Proto-Afro-Asiatic, you don't get nothing out of this abstract, get this part. The Proto-Afro-Asiatic group carrying the EP2 mutation. What is the EP2? The father branch of E1B1A and E1B1B. The Proto-Afro-Asiatic group. What does proto mean? First, Afro-Asiatic, the language tree, the phylum. The Proto-Afro-Asiatic group carrying the EP2 mutation may have appeared at this point in time and subsequently gave rise to the different major population groups, including current speakers of the Afro-Asiatic language and the pastoralist populations. So this paper is giving origin, as it says, of the Afro-Asiatic languages. The root of the tree is coming through haplogroup E, which makes sense because we're saying that this is Shem. We're saying that we went to these localities. We made North Africa our stomping ground. We are Middle Eastern haplogroup designation. Our origins in Asia. We're claiming this Shemite thing. And also the father of all of these Semitic languages come through haplogroup E. No haplogroup E, no Semitic languages because it's dispersed through them. And it starts with them, Proto-Afro-Asiatic group. Now, not only the Afro-Asiatics are going to be mad, Afrocentrics are going to be mad at me. The next group is going to be the Jewish community. Now they're going to be upset. The white Hebrew Israelites are going to be upset this part. They're going to be upset. Because the fathers of those languages come through our ancestors. And you're just going to have to sit there and be mad like a baby in a pissy diaper.
You looking at yourself crying in the mirror?
Oh my
God.
That's my white Hebrew Israelite brothers right now that's upset and mad and push the J marker, you know what I'm saying? Even Berean and the supporters, you know what I'm saying? They upset right now too. This them too.
You looking at yourself crying in the mirror?
Shut the fuck up.
You know, you're pushing for people that come from the Caucasus, have nothing to do with the Proto-Afro-Asiatic, have nothing to do with the Top-Ron individuals, have nothing to do with the early Levantine population, have nothing to do with Shemites, but are Japhites. And that's why you're mad. The evidence is in our favor. It's making you can't, or you black niggers, all you do is take. No, you guys took. We started Afro-Asiatic languages, and we got the proof. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Same article. Now let's deal with this PCA. PCA MDS displays similar interesting grouping of the Afar and Asaho populations of Eritrea with their Near Eastern Arabian populations to conjure up on the genetic relationship of the two sides of the Red Sea. The arrival of the EM35 and derived subclades, for example, EM123/EM34 to Arabia, appears to be strongly linked to the expansion into East Africa, North Africa, Europe, Southern Africa, in an event that is likely related to pastoralism, hastened by its advent and amenable for analysis and dating using approaches similar to what is proposed for the co-migration of Y chromosomes and disease traits. So this is what they did. They traced these populations through Near Eastern and Eastern Africa and seen the clades that lined up with that. Let's get to the conclusion. Although most of the data sets in our study define the deep ancestry of the phylogeny, they still shed some information to our interpretations of recent phenomena, such as the current genetic diversity of the E haplogroup and an implication to the origin. Listen, I want y'all to hear clearly. The origin and spread of Afro-Asiatic languages. The origin and spread Afro-Asiatic languages into the history of pastoralism. That's our haplogroup. You can thank us for that. You can thank us for that. I know you white Hebrew Israelites are upset right now. It is what it is. Such perspectives, however, should be tested by using more recently derived markers within the major haplogroups to explain the archaeological findings in the historical and current demography of the region. Moreover, more comparative genetic analysis between the two sides of Red Sea, especially emphasizing on EM123, EM34, or EM78 haplogroups, will not only refine the route of exit of Homo sapiens sapiens from East Africa, but also the genealogies of Afro-Asiatic languages in the region. It's all E markers right there. All right, here's another point of evidence. And notice what I named this: Eurasian migrations, plural. There were multiple Eurasian migrations into Africa. We're going back and forth for years. Thousands and thousands of years this has been taking place. Next point that I want to bring out is Africans carrying surprising amount of Neanderthal DNA. People on every continent, including Africa, have a genetic legacy from our extinct cousins. Now, I remember the Afrocentrists would say, no, we don't have any Neanderthal DNA. Bullshit. This is why it's important that you read. This is why it's important that you study. This is why. So I got a special message for you guys, a PSA for you guys that don't like to read. Here we go.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere, friends to know and ways to grow, a reading rainbow.
Reading rainbow. It's time for you guys to embrace literacy. All right. So I can do anything, exactly. Only if you read, In this article, it states, for 10 years, geneticists have told the story of how Neanderthals, or at least their DNA sequences, live on in today's Europeans, Asians, and their descendants. Not so in Africans. The story goes because modern humans and our extinct cousins interbred only outside of Africa. A new study overturns that notion, revealing an unexpectedly large amount of Neanderthal ancestry in modern populations across Africa. It suggests much of that DNA came from Europeans migrating back into Africa over the past 20,000 years. So that's another point of evidence, the Neanderthal DNA component amongst Africans. Previous efforts simply assumed that Africans largely lack Neanderthal DNA. To get more reliable numbers, Princeton University evolutionary biologist YASHAR-YA'OH compared the genome of Neanderthal from Russia's Altai region in Siberia, sequenced in 2013 to 2504 2,504 modern genomes uploaded to the 1,000 Genomes Project, a catalog of genomes from around the world that includes 5 African subpopulations. The researchers then calculated the probability that each stretch of DNA was inherited from a Neanderthal ancestor. The researchers found that African individuals, on average, had significantly more Neanderthal DNA than previously thought, about 17 megabases worth, or 0.3% of their genome. They also found signs that a handful of Neanderthal genes may have been selected for after they entered African genomes, including genes that boost immune function, protect against ultraviolet radiation. The results Jibe, with as yet unpublished works by Sarah Tishkoff, an evolutionary geneticist at the University of Pennsylvania. She told Science she has also found higher than expected levels of apparent Neanderthal DNA in Africans. So again, how did they get that? Because of Eurasian migrations back into Africa. It's a very plausible explanation for that. Evidence for the migrations. All right, so we're going to move on from that to this book here, Ancient DNA Studies in African Population History. It states, furthermore, it was shown that agriculture had a large influence on the distribution of current-day Africans, and that West African agriculturalist populations populate the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, replacing, I'm going to say it again, replacing in or assimilating former groups. Who are these groups? Your A and B autochthonous Africans, which we deem as Ham, according to our model. Other forming groups from Northeast Africa, speaking Nilo-Saharan and Afro-Asiatic languages, admixed with Eurasian groups and also expanded southwards. They settled in East Africa and migrated as far as Southern Africa, where they admixed with the Sun hunter-gatherer ancestors to form the Khoi herding groups. These later population movements disrupted pre-existing population distributions and complicate inferences regarding deep human history. Ancient DNA studies in early Neolithic, less than 7,000 years ago, Moroccan remains indeed found in individuals to be genetically most similar to the Anatolian farmers and Natufians from the Middle East, suggesting a potential early migration of these groups westward. West from where? Middle East. West. You travel west from the Middle East, you go into Africa. However, a study on the 15,000-year-old remains from Morocco conclusively demonstrated that Northern Africa received significant amounts of gene flow from Eurasia. Let me read that again. However, a study on 15,000-year-old remains from Morocco. Who are these individuals? The Ibero-Maurusians, the Tafarat individuals, with 60% of their autosomes being Near Eastern, which pointed to a Southwest Asian origin, right? As we read earlier. It states here, however, a study on the 15,000-year-old remains from Morocco conclusively demonstrated that Northern Africa received significant amounts of gene flow from Eurasia, predating the start of the Holocene in the development of the farming practices. What did we read earlier about Northern Africa? E1B1A, E1B1B was present there. We can posit that. And that place is known for Eurasian gene flow. Ancient DNA studies further found that early Neolithic North Africans, less than 7,000 years ago, traced their ancestry to these Paleolithic North African groups, while late Neolithic groups less than 5,000 years ago contains an Iberian component indicating trans-Gibraltar gene flow. These two different signals in the early and late Neolithic indicate that the spread of farming practices in North Africa involved both the movement of ideas and people. That the spread of farming practices in North Africa involved both the movement of ideas. Ideas is cultural diffusion in people. People is demic diffusion when actual people move. Because some people will try to be slick and say, oh, only cultural diffusion happened through trade. No, demic diffusion happened. People moved into Africa. You Afrocentrics try to be slick, man. Same chapter. It says an autosomal DNA. Did we just read this? No. An ancient DNA study generated 2 mitochondrial genomes from less than 7,000 years ago. Individuals associated to the middle pastoral Neolithic context from the central Sahara region. These individuals carried a lineage basal to the Eurasian haplogroup N, while the result demonstrated the presence of an ancestral lineage of the N haplogroup in the Holocene Green Sahara. It is unclear whether the haplogroup originated in Africa and subsequently was lost due to drift or population replacement, or whether the haplogroup was introduced by a back migration into Africa. And of course, we lean towards the latter. Gene flow from the south across the Sahara into the modern-day North Africans seem to have been low and appeared in relatively recent times. In the easternmost part of North Africa, ancient DNA studies of mummies also indicated that gene flow from Saharans was recent and that people in classical Egypt displayed less Sub-Saharan admixture compared to present-day Egyptians. Now, who does this include? Who does this include, what was just stated? If you guys have been paying attention to the prior episodes, Ramesses III is E1B1A. He's E1B1A, and they also found an E1B1B mummy dated to about the 13th century BCE. These individuals would not have had high Sub-Saharan African admixture. Why? Because as we posit and as we show and prove, we would have been in North Africa and we would have been in the Middle East prior to this. And other places in Asia as well. We're going to get into it with the DNA. What does the ancient DNA say? So, of course, we would have not put up those autosomes early on at the onset. So as it says here, ancient DNA studies of mummies also indicated that gene flow from Sub-Saharan was recent and that people in classical Egypt displayed less Sub-Saharan admixture compared to present-day Egyptians. And they give you the paper right here cited. More ancient individuals from Morocco, however, seem to have had a higher affinity to Sub-Saharan Africans. In the 15,000 year ago, Paleolithic individuals derived 1/3 of their ancestry of Sub-Saharan Africans. This Sub-Saharan ancestry was best represented by an equal mixture of present-day East Africans, hunter-gatherers, and West Africans. Here's a paper here. A back migration from Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa is supported by high-resolution analysis of human Y chromosome haplotypes. Phylogeographic analysis suggests that a large component of the present Khoisan gene pool is East African in origin, and that Asia was the source of a back migration to Sub-Saharan Africa. That Asia was a source of a back migration to Sub-Saharan Africa. Haplogroup 9, which if you guys are not familiar with this classification, haplogroup 9 would be haplogroup R. Haplogroup 9 Y chromosomes appear to have been involved in such a migration, the traces of which can now be observed mostly in northern Cameroon. We read this earlier, that haplogroup R are amongst some of the Fulani in Cameroon and also the Chadics, and they have the ability to digest milk, which has been postulated to come from non-Africans, showing a gene flow happened. People traveled into Africa and into Sub-Saharan Africa from Asia, right? Next source, molecular photo fitting. We quoted this book in times past. It says the significance of our results suggests that Western African affiliation is a bona fide element of Middle Eastern population structure. Let me read that again, because maybe that went over somebody's head. Maybe I read that too fast. Let me read that again. The significance of our results suggests that the Western African affiliation is a bona fide element of Middle Eastern population structure. Some of this West African affiliation is likely due to recent admixture. Though the enslavement of West Africans by Europeans as part of the Atlantic slave trade gains most of the attention from historians, it's well known that this slave trade was preceded by an equally robust trade across the Mediterranean into the ancient worlds, including the Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and Arab empires, as well as in other areas, including Iceland. Earlier population expansions of groups such as the Moors could also have contributed to West African admixture from Mediterranean and Middle Eastern populations. However, it seems unlikely that recent admixture would explain such a substantial distribution of West African character across South Asia and Middle East. We probably need to look at a shared common origin hypothesis in a bit more detail. So what is that saying? Yeah, you can invoke slavery and say that's why you see West African components in Middle Eastern population structure, but that does not give you enough to explain such a great amount of this West African component that we see in the Middle East and South Asia. And it says, look at a shared common origin hypothesis, meaning what we've been reading all day, that these people had their origin outside of Africa. These people had their origin in Asia. Maybe that's the explanation to why we see such a significant component of West Africans in the Middle East. This is what this book is telling you. And again, man, PSA to the people. This is why you got to read, man. You have to take out the time to research and read. You have to. You niggas need to read. The book ain't going to bite you. It ain't going to hurt you to crack that seal and actually read.
Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. R-E-A-D-A-B-O-O-K. 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 Not a sports page, not a magazine, but a book, nigga. A fucking book, nigga. Not a sports page, not a magazine, but a book, nigga. A fucking book, nigga. Not a sports page, not a magazine, but a book, nigga. A fucking book, nigga. Not a sports page, not a magazine, but a book, nigga. A fucking book, nigga. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. R-E-A-D-A-B-O-O-K. 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 R-E-A.
Read a goddamn book. That's my message to you, brothers and sisters that's watching. Read. All right, let's get back into it. It says, as mentioned, the distribution of West African affiliation in Europe and the Middle East mirrored the distribution of the EY chromosome haplogroup, specifically the E3B haplogroup. So the West African component mirrors the EY chromosome haplogroup. E is largely confined to Africa, but is a YAP-containing haplogroup that could very well have originated in the Near East or in remote Northeast Africa. Let me read again, but is a YAP-containing haplogroup that could very well have originated in the Near East or in the remote Northeast Africa. It so happens that E haplogroup branched from other African haplogroups relatively recently compared to other haplogroups, but still many tens of thousands of years ago. The D haplogroup is the sibling of E and is found mainly in East Asia, primarily in Japan. Yet with the 171 AIM panel discussed in this chapter, we find the West African affiliation for East Asians, including the Japanese. Evidently, the D haplogroup is more genetically distant from Africa due to the extreme genetic drift. in or selection in East Asia, and evidently E has not gone through the same pressures, staying relatively close to home in Africa, both in terms of modern-day geographic distribution and as our results suggest. In terms of genetic distance, it's undoubtedly the recent origin of E from the African haplogroups that explain why the MLE version of our test, and less extent the Admixture map version, as well as detecting African affiliation wherever E is found. A recent spread of E throughout Africa, perhaps during the Bantu expansion, could be another factor. So again, in layman's terms, what it's saying here is why we have so many autosomes that point towards Africa could have been gotten recently through something like the Bantu expansion. Right? It says also, we have no idea what these original YAP carriers look like, but common sense would dictate that since their descendants currently live in East Asia, Central Asia, Near East, and Europe, populations among which anthropometric traits vary dramatically, and since the source was the same that contributed to most modern-day Africans, they must have taken a decidedly non-European appearance. This is not to say that they must have looked Negroid in appearance. Howell studied 2,800 skulls measuring craniometric variations in modern populations and prehistoric East African fossils. And the general conclusion from this work were the prehistoric East Africans, presumably the earliest YAP carriers, were non-African in nature, that is not Negroid. So what they're saying is what we consider to be associated with E markers in Sub-Saharan Africa and how they look with the prognosticism, big lips, wide cheekbone, all that stuff probably was not in our those traits were probably not in our ancestors. We probably picked that up during things like the Bantu expansion and mixing with the Pygmies and whatnot. It said this is a contrast to skulls from modern-day East Africans, although East Africa may have been the birthplace of non-African variants who migrated to populate the world. The ensuing picture of East Africa would later have been changed through the replacement of expansions of Bantu or other Negro tribes. All right, so let's keep moving. Same article. West African ancestry in Southeastern Europe and the Middle East. It says we can note from figures 6.3 and 6.4 that as we proceed from Ireland to India, the level of West African affiliation gradually increases, though the levels in the Southeastern Europe are much greater in Northern Europe with the MLE program. The sample sizes of these populations in the study do not allow for a demonstration of statistical significance for these levels. However, in the Middle East and South Asia, the West African affiliation reached levels that are so high that even with low sample sizes, we can show statistical significance. The geographical proximity of these regions to Africa may suggest relatively recent population expansions or migrations. Note that the further from African continent one gets, the lower the West African affiliation. However, there is no reason to impose a recent timeline on such events. And I just want to read this evidence here. It says, Underhill et al. Showed the frequency of the YAP positive Y haplogroup, commonly referred to as haplogroup E or 3, is relatively high, about 25% in the Middle East and Mediterranean. Again, this is why the author of this book and in this section of his book was saying that we cannot just stick this and explain this away with slavery or recent migrations. These people could have been here through a common origin hypothesis, meaning they've always been there. The time's passed. All right. Back migration from Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa is supported by high-resolution analysis of human Y chromosome haplotypes. We dug into this article a little earlier, but let's bring it back up. Excuse me. It says, on the basis of phylogeographic Y haplotype analysis, Asia has been regarded as the source of several old migrations leading to the peopling of America, Oceania, and Europe. In particular, M173-bearing chromosomes in Europe are considered to delineate an ancient expansion from Asia during the Upper Paleolithic, less than 30,000 years ago. It is quite reasonable to hypothesize that an ancient Asian gene pool was a source of both European and Cameroonian haplotype 117 M173 chromosome. This is the haplotype R that we're talking about. It says the fact that haplotype 117 is rare or absent in Asia or the Middle East suggests that a large portion of microsatellite diversity in Cameroon accumulated within the African continent after the proposed back migration event. probably as a consequence of population expansion. The coalescent age of the African haplotype 117, which we estimated at 4,100 years, could thus represent a date for such an expansion and a lower limit for the time of entry into Africa. So they're saying, well, since the coalescent age is 4,100 years, is when this particular haplotype arose, they're saying that could be the upper limit. That could be the time when we see haplogroup R coming from Asia and traveling into Africa and making its way all the way to Sub-Saharan Africa and present-day Cameroon. We know that this took place in time because you have people in Cameroon amongst the Fulani. Then you have the Chadic people as well. They have haplogroup R. How did they get there? They had to travel. That's why we said this is endemic diffusion, not just cultural diffusion. People love throwing that cultural diffusion out there. Oh, just ideas being shared. No, people, actual people moved. It says, could thus this represent a date for expansion, a lower limit for the time of entry into Africa? The occurrence of the latter event may not necessarily be recent, although anthropological evidence indicates recent movements between Western Asia and Africa by pastoralists. The phylogeography and diversity patterns of M173 associated lineages suggest an earlier demographic history. The absence of northern Cameroon, a Y haplotype affiliated with the recolonization of Europe, followed the last glacial maximum, as well as the subsequent Neolithic transition, is consistent with the interpretation. Interestingly, phylogenetic analysis of primate T-cell lymphotropic virus type 1 indicates a putative Asian origin, followed by a simian or human-mediated introduction to Africa less than 20,000 years ago. So on top of seeing haplogroup R in Sub-Saharan Africa as proof that you have people coming from Asia, you also have a virus that has an Asian origin that has found its way into Sub-Saharan Africa as well. And they believe that humans carried this virus with them from Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa. So we can see the evidence is thick when it comes to showing that people migrated from Asia into Africa, and not just Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, that you know that type of migration was possible. Same article says an ancient human migration from Asia to Africa has already been proposed by Alfthide and Hammer et al. On the basis of the nested cladistic analysis of Y chromosome data. They suggested that the presence of YAP chromosomes in Africa was due to such an event. Meaning what? We see E in Africa because it traveled from Asia into Africa, just as we see haplogroup R. So, but this has recently been questioned. People question it because why? They want to make E primarily an African group. Primarily on the basis of the Asian-specific YAP positive subclade that neutralizes the previous phylogenetic inferences. Thus, the only evidence of migration from Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa that is fully supported by Y chromosome data relies, at least for the moment, on the finding of haplogroup 9, which is, again, haplogroup R chromosomes in Cameroon. So this was back in 2002. What I find important right here, because at this time, they didn't know about this ancient DNA that I'm about to share with you guys. This is E1B1A that was discovered in a belt cave in Iran. This is far from Africa, and they dated between 12 to 8,000 BCE. 12 to 8,000 BCE, this E1B1A clade was found. And as you can see, it was found in Iran. If you see the glyph if you see the photo, the screenshot that I took from the spreadsheet on the right, you can clearly see that it's E1B1A1A1C2B. And the mtDNA is K2A. And I believe K is a Eurasian or a European mitochondrial DNA. But its Y chromosome is E1B1A, and they found it in Iran. This is the oldest E1B1A DNA that we ever found. And it's not located in Africa. It's located in Iran. So explain that. We also found E1B1A in the BMAC. We talked about this before. To the left, you can see the actual specimen, E1B1A1A1C23, and the mitochondrial J1C10, found in the Golner tube, right? I believe in Turkmenistan or the BMAC, dated to 2100 to 1900 BCE. So we're finding E1B1A, and we brought out the E1B1A dated to about 4,000 years ago in France. We brought that out. We brought out the Corsica E1B1A paired with the E1B1B that was found outside of Africa. Yeah, this is you got to explain this. Just like that book said, a common origin hypothesis is needed. This is why you see a lot of West African affiliation today in the Middle Eastern population structure. This is why. The ancient DNA is telling the story. All right, follow that up. We have the supplementary materials for Pleistocene North African genomes linking Near Eastern and Sub-Saharan African human populations. It reads, an interesting feature of the Near Eastern gene pool is the genetic legacy of the so-called basal Eurasians. Remember, we read earlier, North Africa harbored basal Eurasians, and Tafarat individuals, Ibero-Maurusians, could very well be direct descendants of basal Eurasians, which are also E markers, which E1B1B, which is connected to E1B1A because they share the same ancestor, EP2, which is also the progenitor of the Proto-Afro-Asiatic, is where you get all these Proto-Afro-Asiatic languages from. Which is also we can tie to Shem, because as we read earlier in the Jubilees, North Africa was also allotted to Shem. And then Abraham's son, the legend of Abraham's son, contributing peoples to North Africa as well, and even claiming that the word Africa comes from his son. So we're building this case here. We're building this case, and we have strong evidence to prove so. You're right, Laban. Let me respond to that. He said, I read this study. There was a lot of haplogroup A found in Eurasia as well. That is true. They found several A and B haplogroups as well, which we will toss up as being Hamites. Shout out to Laban Ben Yeshurun. Let me get back to this study here. Oh, let me go back. So it says the basal Eurasian gene pool is also assumed to have no Neanderthal ancestry, i.e. its early branch of non-Africans that split off from the rest prior to the admixture with Neanderthal. If such characteristics are assumed, their contribution to Near Eastern and correlate to early Neolithic European farmers can provide an explanation for interesting observations. These include the apparent closer relationship to East Eurasians to the Ice Age Europeans than to the Neolithic European farmers, and consequently a lower amount of Neanderthal ancestry in Eastern Day West Eurasians. So far, the early Holocene populations from the Near East are known to have the highest proportion of basal Eurasian ancestry, up to around 50%. For example, the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers from the Caucasus, in Iran, early Neolithic Levant, and early Neolithic Iran. Expansion of the derived basal Eurasian populations and subsequent admixture with local populations is considered to have substantially decreased the Neanderthal ancestry proportion in Near Eastern populations that changed from foraging to early food production. It is unknown where and when the basal Eurasians emerged and how the Holocene Near Easterners obtained this ancestry in large quantity. North Africa is a strong candidate for the place having kept basal Eurasians because it is well connected to Eurasia. From the point of view, the Upper Paleolithic individuals from Tafarat are likely candidates as being direct descendants of or closely derived from the basal Eurasian population. Again, these people had E markers. Reading on, in the same supplementary materials, it says, to understand the genetic affinity of our Tafarat individuals with worldwide ancient and present-day populations, we first perform principal component analysis and admixture analysis. For PCA, we construct the PCs from present-day population sets from genetic diversity at 3 different geographical resolutions: global population restricted to Africa, the Near East, and Southern Europe, and project. We use Program Smart PCA from the IGenSoft package with option ISP project and turn the outline remover off. The reason why I'm reading all this because it's important to understand what a PC does. It gives you the genetic affinity, right? And when we look at the results of this PC analysis that they did, It's going to reveal something very telling. It says the results for the PCA analysis that are based on African populations to construct the PC show that the top-rod individuals do not cluster with any present-day population. Instead, they take an intermediate position between present-day North Africans and Sub-Saharan Africans. This is why it's labeled Pleistocene North African genomes linked Near Eastern and Sub-Saharan African human population. This is why they labeled it this. That's why they gave it that title, because of this. It says instead they take on an intermediate position between present-day North Africans and Sub-Saharan Africans. Specifically, they are flanked by North African Mozabites and Sahari in East African Afars on the Near Eastern and Sub-Saharan African directions. Respectively, the East African groups Afar, Oromo, and Somali, as well as the 3,000-year-old individual from Tanzania, are the closest to the top rod from Sub-Saharan Africa side. And also, if you study about the Tanzanian individual, that also links back to the Near East. But that's for another time. So it's for the East African groups, which together with the top rod take an intermediate position between the Sub-Saharan Africans and West Eurasians. Genetic links with the Near East have been proposed. So they did the PCA analysis, see the affinity between top rod individuals, which themselves had 60% Near Eastern autosomal DNA that are connected to the Near East. So once they found this connection with modern Sub-Saharan African groups, this is what they found. It says here, let me read it again. Genetic links with the Near East have been proposed. Why? Because which together with Tafra take intermediate positions between Sub-Saharan Africans and West Eurasians. Therefore, genetic links with the Near East have been proposed. These links include an introduction of early Neolithic Levant-like ancestry. I want y'all to hear this. Associated with the spread of pastoralism into East Africa less than 4,000 years before present. In South Africa, less than 2,000 years before present. A more recent link is the spread of Bronze Age Levant-like ancestry in Sub-Saharan Africa. A more recent link is the spread of Bronze Age Levant-like ancestry in Sub-Saharan Africa together with agriculture during the Bantu expansion. What is this? A genetic link with the Near East have been proposed. What is that link? A more recent link is the spread of Bronze Age Levant-like ancestry in Sub-Saharan Africa together with agriculture during the Bantu expansion. This would explain why you see such material culture that comes from Asia associated with the Bantu expansion, coconuts, bananas, millets, cowpeas, the type of cows that they had, the double humpback cattle, the iron metallurgy, the ability to even do agriculture. It's explained through this. A more recent link is the spread of Bronze Age Levant-like ancestry in Sub-Saharan Africa together with the agriculture during the Bantu expansion. The Bronze Age Levant gene pool has been proposed to be a mixture of the Neolithic Levant with individuals related to the Caucasus hunter-gatherers and early Neolithic farmers from Iran and from Anatolia. We see that being associated with the Bantu expansion, which is largely a YAP E1B1A expansion. Are y'all going to angrily write this paper and say, you guys are anti-Semitic? Why would you write this for the niggers to find? The niggers find this, they're going to go crazy. Is that what y'all going to do, man? One more time. A more recent link is the spread of Bronze Age Levant-like ancestry in Sub-Saharan Africa together with agriculture during the Bantu expansion. Let's move on to the next one. We're almost done. It states here, ancient admixture into Africa from the ancestors of non-Africans. This was published in 2020. It says less gene flow to Central and South African hunter-gatherers. We infer substantial Eurasian back migration into all African groups. Let me read that again. This is in a scientific article. It states, we infer substantial Eurasian back migration into all African groups. Let that be noted. However, the inferred IMFs for individuals from Khoisan populations are significantly lower than for any other group. To further support this observation, we use MSMC to estimate the relative correlation rate for several populations and find evidence for gene flow between Yorubans and Eurasians that is not shared with Khoisan individuals in either the SGPD and the HGDP. To further support this observation, we use MSMC to estimate the relative cross-correlation rate for several populations and find evidence for gene flow between Yorubans and Eurasians. These results are consistent across Eurasian donor populations. The Khoisan individuals are particular outliers whose ancestors are inferred to have experienced approximately half the amount of admixture seen in Sub-Saharan and Niger-Kordofan groups. In addition, we find them in Mbuti and Biaka, both Central African hunter-gatherer populations show levels of Eurasian gene flow that are intermediate between levels observed in the Khoisan and Yorubans. So we do see, and we're going to talk about this a little later. I got a quote from Remy Yona that I want to express and then actually match it with the DNA findings, what he's saying. The Eurasian gene flow that are intermediate between levels observed in the Khoisan and Yorubans. This is mirrored by inferred IMFs for Central African hunter-gatherers, which are significantly lower than other Niger-Kordofan groups, possibly reflecting the proposed early split times in Mbuti and Biaka from the remainder of ancestral African populations from 60 to 200,000 years ago. All right, let's get to the Remy Yona quotations. We're almost finished. Now, this is a lengthy one. A lot of information that I wanted to get out there to prove the Eurasian migrations, plural, migrations with an S, into Africa. Now, this is from the book Igbo's and Abraham's DNA, the greatest secret of our time unveiled by Remy Yona. As you guys know, Remy Yona is an Igbo. He identifies as a Jew, and he believes that the Igbo ancient people were Jews and they come from the Near East. I'm going to read from his book. It says, as I see it to be demonstrably proven to be lineal descendant of an early Israelite, a modern human being has to be proven to have DNA materials and ancestral culture, which those in one of the populations that lived in the Near East or Middle East. This region is the large area that joins Africa and Asia. It is where history and archaeology have demonstrated that the Israelites became a community with a distinct culture. Basically, genetic analysis for history of ancestry, which presently many regard as hard science, has confirmed what Igbo history and culture view dispassionately have shown. Igbos are lineal descendants of early Hebrews who became Israelites. Now, a lot of y'all watching, a lot of you guys watching white Hebrew Israelites that are probably watching, like, bullshit. What did we just read? What did we just read about the Bantu ancestry? What did we just read about the Eurasian migrations? What did we just read showing the Levant-like ancestry and multiple African populations, which is inferred in all African populations within the last article we just read? So we can argue this. Read it again. And then the heavy West African component that we have in Middle Easterns today, pointing to a common origin hypothesis, meaning that that's where we had our origin. That's where we started. That's why you have people like Klyasov saying that DE is Middle Eastern. So there is merit to what this brother is saying. It says, Igbos are lineal descendants of the early Hebrews who became Israelites, the DNA history below. Even if you don't want to say they're Israelites, we still can stake a claim of being Shem. Same book. He says, prepared by my heritage incorporated illustrates very clearly that Igbo genes match those in the gene pool in the Middle East and he's 92% Nigerian, 5% Kenyan, and 1% Middle Eastern. It says here that the history also crucially links Igbos and even the Jews called Ashkenazis presently. GenMatch revealed that the genes match European early farmers. MyHeritage Inc.'s genetic history of an Igbo male, shown above, also tells two other stories. It demonstrates that many Igbos, or more appropriately, their very ancient forebears, migrated to a region of the modern country called Nigeria, which, when I just read, the Bantu and Bantu expansion is associated with Levant-like ancestry, right? And then the Yoruba having Middle Eastern genes as well. We can infer that that comes from a Eurasian backflow into Africa, which the Yoruba and Igbos are 99% similar. I'm going to read on. It says, and it also says that forebears of Igbos emerged or evolved with what we call humans because prehistoric man was not tied to ethnicities in an area of what is called East Africa presently, moved from there to what is called the Near East presently, and from there migrated to what became West Africa. In this study, we look very carefully at all the points raised. We would also rigorously examine what I would call Igbo DNA history. This embattled ethnic group, which has been dogged by adversity, already has its history with DNA as well. We would look at why we got involved in studying the genes of Igbo people. So his claim, we can build an argument and have merit behind it. It's not baseless. Now we have the final strat. The final strat, excuse me. YAP as an Asian origin, Genomes, Evolution, and Culture by Rain J. Haraya, page number 190. It says, in terms of Y chromosome specific markers, there are a number of markers and haplogroups that had their genesis in Asia. For example, although DEM1 super haplogroup YAP insertion has been postulated to have its origin in East Africa approximately 65,000 years ago, more recent reports indicate Asian origin and an introduction into Africa later. The same can be said about haplogroup E, a descendant of DE. And haplogroup E has been postulated to originate in East Africa and Asia by two independent research groups. If indeed haplogroup E, the most abundant lineage in Africa, had its genesis in Asia, it represents the most successful back migration of modern humans into Africa. Asian gene flow in Sub-Saharan Africa, same book, page 140. A back to Africa migration from Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa is supported by the analysis of Y chromosome haplotypes. The analysis suggests a significant amount of the extant Khoisan gene pool from Southern Africa is East African in origin, and that Asia was the source of the back migration to Sub-Saharan Africa. Y chromosomes with haplogroup 9, which is R, appear to have been involved in the migration, the traces of which can now be seen mostly in northern Cameroon. I forgot to add this, the Limbus DNA profile. I forgot to add this. But the Limbus show the same thing of Eurasian migration, because when you look at the Limba, they got K, L, they got I amongst them, and they got J amongst them, showing you that Eurasians traveled with these E markers into Sub-Saharan Africa. We can make that argument. Haplogroup R, proof of Asian migration. Again, page 140, same source, page 141 and 142. It says, in addition to the wide geographical distribution of EM81 in northwestern Africa, but absent in other parts of Africa, the RM207 and RM173 mutations normally found in Western Eurasia, Central, Northern, and Southern Asia were found in high frequencies in sub-Saharan African populations such as Cameroon. Based on this Y chromosome data, the presence of a predominantly Asian mutation in sub-Saharan Africa seems to suggest a male-dominated backward migration from Asia to Africa. So the fact that we see R in Cameroon, in sub-Saharan Africa, we can clearly see that one, Asian migration into Africa took place, and B, that it was possible and it happened in times past. The account matches the DNA inferences. This is The Black Jews of Africa by Edith Bruder, page number 149. According to YASHAR-YA'OH, before the arrival of Christian missionaries, the Sefwi people had specific traditions deriving from Judaism. They strictly adhered to the rest on Saturday, followed dietary restrictions that forbade them to eat pork, circumcised boys, and required women to go into isolation during their menstrual period, and so on. The founders of the community suggested that their ancestors originated from Jews in North Africa who had crossed the Sahara Desert centuries ago, perhaps from Timbuktu, ended up in the Ivory Coast. Now, I want to add to this, remember what we read earlier, E1B when they spread from North Africa with the Bantu expansion. North Africa being a cradle for Eurasians, so on and so on. We keep going and draw these emphasis and these ties. Another clue is horses in West Africa. Now, we know horses, horses were first rode in Eurasia, but we can see the note culture had horses. We have the clay figurines, and we also have a tooth from a horse that was discovered in West Africa. This is from the book Horses in West African History by Robin Law, page number 34 to 35. The antiquity of horses on the plateau is suggested by the horse tooth found in the Stone Age levels at Rope. Against this, it might be urged that there is no evidence of uses of horses among the remains of the Iron Age note culture, which flourished on the plateau between the 5th century BC and 2nd century AD. But negative evidence of this sort cannot be regarded as decisive. It is suggested that the horses of the plateau belong to a distinctive breed smaller than the horses of the surrounding lowlands. And I've done PowerPoints before where I've actually showed pictures of the note culture and their horses. And we know horses are not indigenous to West Africa. We know this, but they had horses. Horses domesticated in Eurasia first. This is from the World of Oshu Civilization by Bartel-Lyonet, page number 757. Substantial evidence for horse domestication and herding has also been documented in Eurasian steppe rock art beginning from the late 3rd or early 2nd millennium BC, or like earlier periods when horses primarily depicted in hunting scenes or alone. The Bronze Age petroglyphs show both horses being hunted and already domesticated. Engravings and carvings of the latter have been discovered in the Bronze Age site of the Bajkonur in central Kazakhstan, depicting horses with straps attached to the nostrils or mouth. Again, the domestication of horses happened in Eurasia, and we see it also in West Africa. All right. That's associated. Origins and Migration by Ranger Herrera, Ralph Garcia Bertrand, page number 430 and 431. It says these early Bantus also brought with them our agricultural technology, which included crops such as banana, yam, coconut, sorghum, millet, cowpeas, and melons, in addition to iron and copper metallurgy. Although these domesticated species were transported by advancing Bantus along the eastern and western African streams, many had origins outside of Africa. But when we look at all of the culmination of the evidence that we provided today, it makes sense why they had bananas, yams, coconuts, millet, and cowpeas, and the ability to do metallurgy. It makes sense. Sub-Saharan Africa did not have a natural progression from copper, bronze, iron. They went straight to iron. Why? Because these people already had this skill. We can argue that they migrated from outside of Sub-Saharan Africa, bringing these skills with them, bringing with them the agricultural technology, bringing with them the bananas, the yams, the coconuts, the cowpeas, the melons. Because just like these items have their origin outside of Africa, maybe these people had their origin outside of Africa. And with that, that's the end of the presentation. Any questions? Do we have any questions from the audience before we get out of here? Let me stroll up and down, see what's going on. Tanks on the ground. Shout out to my brother Yashar, Source Gang in the building. You heard me? Shout out to Shari, Sister Shari in the building, Yap Gang. Shout out to my brother Ramal-YA'OH in the building. Shalom. Elkan Barlow, shalom. Shalom to my brother Yap. Yap Gang in the building we putting on. And shalom to my brother Sean, man. Shalom, Yap Gang, Source Gang in the building. We in here. We're well cited. We have sources. We have the information. So any questions before we get out of here? I'll give y'all a minute.
Let me work. Please let me work. Get that water. He about to get this work. He about to get this work. Hold up. He gonna get this work. He gonna get this work, nigga. Hold up. He gonna get this work. He gonna get this work, nigga. I killed you. Hold up. He gonna get this work. Hold up. You niggas gonna get this work, you hear me? Me. He ain't even get the second verse, but he gonna get this work. Hold up, man. He gonna get this work. He gonna get this work. He gonna get this work. Hold up, man. Let me work. He gonna get this work, nigga. Watch me work. He gonna get this work. He gonna get this work. Yeah, he gonna get this work. Hold up. He gonna get this work.
All right, so no questions came in. What you guys can do is leave a comment on the official YouTube, and when I stop the live, you can just put your comments down. And I know this is a very meaty video, so you come up with any questions, just leave a comment on the video, and I will do a video responding to you guys' comments, as long as you're respectful and you're actually looking for an answer. With that, we out of here. 7 gangs, Source Gang over everything. You know how we rocking, man.
This shit can get real freaky. About Pippi Long and Dashiki. Where you at in the address, they'll meet you. We ain't going back and forth and fake beefing. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Shit, nigga. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Like, why you even hanging with them for? Oh, that's your cousin, I put his brains on the floor. They don't never throw no money at the club. All they do is see you and speak me up. Like, what's with all the dick riding, bro? He's a nobody, I sent his ass to the stove. Deep on shit, what you got up on my 40? I like FNs, Dracos, 9s, and little 40s. I sent LJ and MJ outside the garage, give us front row tickets right now before we extort you. Better listen when I speak right now, who getting money? They'll slide up on your block right now. It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Shit, nigga. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Fake tough, you must be off a pill, bro. My shooter with me ain't always in kill mode. Thanks to Rami, I'm always in chill mode. Don't think about it, nigga, I'll kill something. Don't make me go up in the yard still package. Did him like SpongeBob, I'll kill Patrick. I make niggas give real good captions and double back on the candlelight and get it cracking. Get the slap, who put $10,000 on my head, niggas capping. Niggas rappers, niggas actors, niggas bitches, niggas faggots. When his body hit the ground, get his jacket. The op lover died too, it was tragic. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you'll get slayed with the ops. I'm the reason everybody got K's on the block. What I pay for my watch, don't you hang with the cops? It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. Shit, nigga. Hang with the ops, you get slayed with the ops. It's 2021 and niggas still broke. Man. Before Shit, we gon' get this nigga a 6-man casket. Yeah, hang with the house, you get slayed with the house. Yeah, hang with the house, you get slayed with the house. Yeah, yeah, hang with the house, you get slayed with the house. Hang with the house, you get slayed with the house. It's 2021, a nigga still broke.
This 7 candlesticks up, and I've been telling you niggas, it ain't a debate, it's a stick up. Gang!